Hey guys, it's Kim here with Fairily Fiber Fun. Thanks for joining me on part 1 of spinning the upcycled Rolex. So this is the gradient rainbow that I carded into color specific Rolex with a whole lot of blending of other fibers, and one set will be going in the shop. Hopefully by the time you see this, it will be in the shop, no promises. And one set I am spinning for myself of each color. So today we are spinning green, which you did not get to see the carding of because I carded it prior to deciding to film the entire series. If you are new here, welcome to my channel, and if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss new videos as they come out. And if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave comments, suggestions, and questions in the comment section below. And I think that's it. Maybe tell me what you would do. Whoops. Tell me what you would do with this yarn. Would you know, what you would make with it. I'll try to remember to share the yardage and the wraps per inch at the end. Ooh, I plied on this last. Okay. And the take up is too strong. Let's try that again. There we go. I'm going to do my default spin here. So I don't have a project in mind, so I'm not going to spin this for anything specific. I am using the woolly winder, which I oiled. I have not cleaned it yet, but I oiled it. So it should work fairly well. The woolly winder is the flyer that winds evenly along the length of the bobbin. There's a little gear at the front of the bobbin that connects to a gear on the flyer, and that causes the hook inside the shaft to slide up and down as the gear turns. So every time, for this wheel, every time the bobbin stops turning to wind the yarn on, the bobbin turning turns the gear, which causes the hook to slide up and down the arm. It's a really neat piece of technology. I'm really impressed with it. Anyways. This is the second row leg, and I decided not to pre-draft this one to show you how it spins. I might change my mind here in a bit. Pre-drafting is not necessary, but it does make things easier. So right now, the yarn is pulling from the center of the row leg, and in order to get it to pull from the outside, a little bit of extra drafting can be necessary. Like I'm having to hold the center of the row leg so that it'll spin from the outside. Trying to grab the outside of the row leg. These row legs are really thick. They have a lot of fiber. The thicker your row leg, the more pre-drafting helps with managing those fibers. So I've got the weight of my hand resting quite firmly on the body of the row leg. My hands are loose on the gripping it, but right here I'm putting a lot of weight on it so that I'm not drafting parts that I don't want to draft yet. I don't want to draft the center of the tube only. I will change the position of my hand as I go. Now it's pulling from the outside of the roll leg because there's nothing else to pull from the inside really. A little bit on the inside. So this works. It's just easier. You have less issue with managing, or less of your attention and your focus will be on managing the fiber, and more of it will be on just spinning if you've pre-drafted. So, I'm going to draft. It will make it so much easier. And I like an easy spin. I like to just sit back and relax and spin and not have to fuss with the fibers. Now, if I'm doing something fancy, I will fuss with the fibers, but typically I just want to spin and not think about what I'm doing. So, and you can spin from either end of the roll leg. You can break it up. There's no point in breaking this one up because it's all one color. And here I'm just winding it around my hand to reach the other end and to keep it from being all over the floor. I had to switch flyers because the woolly winder wasn't cooperating. It needs to be cleaned very thoroughly. So I'm having to move the hook, which is hard for me to remember because, you know, I'm been trained now to not have to move the hook, so I don't think about it. There is something else I've noticed with this spin, and this is not true of all fibers or all dye jobs. I included in this blend some Texel wool that I had not scoured all of the lanolin out of, and I can really tell because some of the green dye is rubbing off on my fingers as I work. It's not bad. This is my second roll leg since I sat down this time to spin, and there's only a tiny bit. You see there's just a little bit of shadow on my fingers. It was much worse earlier when I spun a good bit at one time. So this may bleed when I wash it. There's a couple of things you can do. I'll probably put a tiny bit of Power Scour in a tepid soak for this, and hopefully that will release the remaining lanolin and the excess dye particles. And then if I have to, I will put it in the dye pot with some vinegar and simmer it for an hour. And that should set the color. And green is sometimes difficult to completely exhaust in the dye pot, so especially jacquard dyes, and that's what I used on the fleece. I don't think that's what I used on the other fibers. The Ida top, it was jacquard dyes. I'm pretty sure on the Cheviot, which I didn't use for this. Or did I? I know I used Corriedale. Yes, I used Cheviot. I used Prochem dyes. I find them to be much easier to use. They exhaust more thoroughly, and I get less bleeding later on in the future. So if your fleece is still a bit dirty or got lanolin in it, the dye will adhere to dirt and lanolin, which is kind of weird, but then it rubs off the wool. When I first started spinning, I spun some, I'll think of the word here in a minute, some cashmere that was dyed a really intense grass green. It turned my drop spindle green, it turned my hands green, everything it touched it turned green. It was a very short stapled fiber, but I spun it, and the only issue I really had was that the dye came off on everything. And you could feel the dye in the fibers. It made it sticky. Okay, the hard part is always getting this thing started without the yarn flying off of it. And then if I go as fast as I want to, the ball of yarn will get to a certain size and go flying across the room. So I have to go slow, which drives me nuts. This is the real speed. And I'm winding a center pole plying ball because I want to ply this, not chain ply it. And there's several different ways. Like you could do an Andean plying bracelet, which if you have the tool, I would recommend using that instead of your hand. This is an awful lot of yarn to Andean ply, to wind into an Andean bracelet. Or Trish from Fiber Love Diary does the turkey hand method, which I can't do. I don't know how she does it. My hand just collapses as I go. You can wind around a jar and then slide it on your wrist. There's a million different things you can do. This is quick and easy, and it's really nice to do. So I'm going to put this on time lapse and let you watch the rest of it. Oh, but before I do, I wanted to explain. I have my ball winder clamped to a board that I can set in my lap, because holding this thing in my hand causes my hand to cramp really bad, and I don't have a place to just clamp it to without having to move a ton of stuff. So having it clamped to a board that I can then brace on my lap is the solution to my issues. So anyway. All right, so we've wound the plying ball, and I'm going to attempt to keep my fingers through the center of it. So I've got the end coming off the center, and that's actually holding its shape quite well. So we have the two ends here. Loop that through the leader and leave a couple of inches of tail. And then the plying is done opposite direction from the spinning. And as I go, yes, one strand is being twisted at a different rate than the other because one's coming from the inside of the ball, which is more tightly wound than the outside. But I do not mind one bit. It's going to turn out great yarn regardless. So I did get the woolly winder all cleaned up. And of course, the one time I tried to film it, everything goes wrong. So it took me 2 hours to figure out what was wrong and how to fix it. And then get it fixed. So everything I tried didn't work. And it was a mess. Anyway, I figured it out. And the tutorial will not have any of that on it. It will just have the basic, when everything goes right. Yeah. But I did get it filmed and everything, so that's good. And it's working so much better. I usually don't ply with the woolly winder, but it's actually working quite well since I cleaned it. So it was leaving black gunk all over my hands and on the paper towels. It was really grody. It's still not winding 100% even, but it never does when I'm plying. It's kind of weird. It sounds like it's doing everything right, and it's pulling the yarn on like it's supposed to, so I'm not worried about it. It's just going on. It's not winding as evenly as it ought to, or else I have thick spots in my yarn. That might be it too. Here's a little bit more of a close-up of what my hands are doing. The ball of yarn is sitting in my lap. I'm not really managing the yarn itself. Now you can do this with a thumb or finger on the inside, and that does help to minimize the tangles, yarn barf, and all that. But if you've allowed your singles to rest for a couple of days, it won't be much of a problem to just spin like this. And if you get a little tangle, you get a little tangle. It's not the end of the world. Stop and you untangle it. Oh, this is really pretty. I'm loving all the different greens in here and the little pops of white and little pops of black or gray, dark gray, little bits of sparkle. From a distance it looks like a solid green, but it really isn't. And spun as a single, like you can see the different colors in here, different tones. But then on the bobbin, those colors really marl together into a neat heathered look. Which is really quite cool. Sometimes one strand will have a pigtail, which that is considered a pigtail. So if you don't want pigtails, to make sure that you're keeping tension on both the strands, which is why I don't like to have my hand in the center of the ball or my fingers, because it's harder to control the two strands. When I use two hands, I can control it fairly easily. Otherwise, I have to reach way out to the side or behind me or something to keep the two yarns tensioned properly, and it's just weird. Today I don't feel like dealing with it, so. As I get towards the end of the plying ball, I kind of hold the ball in my hand with the strands coming from, with fingers in between the strands. That way the ball can twist around in my hand as it needs to, and I'm still pulling from both ends at the same time. If I don't do this, it tends to really tangle up quite badly. So this just keeps it from getting horribly tangled into yarn barf. And then there we have it, all done with no fuss this time around. And that barely fit on the bobbin. I was worried it would slide off the front end of the bobbin, but it didn't. So there we have it. Our green roll eggs are all spun. Now that the spinning is done, I like to use my skein winder to wind it all off the bobbin. I love this thing. I purchased it from Babe's Fiber Garden, and I purchased the 2-yard skein winder that fits on the pinky, the Babe pinky. And then I created my own frame to hold it. And I no longer have the Babe pinky spinning wheel, but I love this skein winder. I'm not using the 2-yard arms. I did create arms to make a 1.5 skein and a 1.5 yard and a 1-yard skein. And I'm using the 1.5 because I'm missing one of my longest arms, and that's just a big pain. Anyways, so I ended up with 180 yards, and it's about a DK weight, which means it'll wash up to a worsted weight because it will poof a little bit. So that's not too terribly bad. My ends don't meet, so I am tying off each end, and then I will tie off, and then I will get a different yarn, and I will add 2 more ties. So there'll be 4 ties to this complete to finish it off. That way when I wash it, it won't get all tangled up, and I won't remove the ties until I'm ready to use the yarn. Anywho, this was a very fun spin. I very much enjoyed it, and I appreciate you all hanging out with me while I make this gorgeous yarn. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As usual, I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys!